Do you wanna dance?
Hey guys, and welcome back to Eurospec Garage. My name is Alex, and we are back to work kind of on the Tiguan. In this video, I'm going to show you guys, or explain rather, how I retrofitted these Highline SEL premium LED headlights. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. It was very difficult to film because lots of tedious work, lots of running wires and things like that, connecting and splicing things, and I just didn't think you guys would be very interested in seeing kind of every step by step. It would have taken quite a long time to do because in real time it took me about 2 months to figure it out, but eventually I got it figured out. And in this video I'm just kind of gonna explain to you guys what I did and lessons learned and things of that nature. But if you guys want an in-depth look into what I did, where the wires went, what modules I used, the part numbers and things like that, I'm gonna drop a link down below to my VW Vortex thread where I've really tried to go through and be as methodical as possible, replicable as possible, so that anyone crazy enough like me to go through something like this has some sort of guide to go by. So I'm going to drop the link down below. Feel free to head over there, check that out. But in this video, I'm going to go through and explain to you guys exactly what I did kind of in more general terms. And then if you, like I said, if you want a more in-depth which wire went where, head on over to my thread on VW Vortex. And so, yeah guys, this Tiguan is an SE here in America. That's kind of the midline trim, and I don't believe any of the midline trim Tiguans in this country got the LED headlights. So that was a problem for me. I didn't like the halogen headlights. I didn't think they performed very well, and I really didn't like the look of them. But driving around, I'd seen some Tiguans with the Highline LEDs, and I just absolutely loved the way they look. In my opinion, the LED signature of these headlights is some of the best, I want to say, in the car industry. Feel free to argue with me on that, but I really, really liked and wanted those headlights. Of course, I had two options. I could have kept the halogen headlights and just kind of lived with them, but since I did have the engine out, the car was being at the body shop, it gave me a lot of time to kind of think and plan ahead. And so I basically had two options. If I wanted those headlights, I could either go for the aftermarket ones that cost about 900 bucks that are plug and play. They look and work just like the LED ones, but they don't have all of the cool features such as the up, down, left, right, following your steering wheel. It doesn't have that, but they look good. So that was one option. The other option was to go ahead and retrofit the real deal, the OEM headlights. And after looking around at some prices, I decided to go with the used OEM LED genuine factory headlights. And maybe I just got really lucky, but in total for the headlights themselves, I spent about 350 bucks, which is actually cheaper than I found even for halogen headlights. Yeah, I got really, really lucky there. They weren't in perfect condition. Some tabs were broken that I fixed, but it ended up actually being worth it somehow. As you guys probably know, Headlights new from the dealer are north of $1,000, $1,500. So that is quite a high point of entry for these headlights. But I went all used and it turned out all right. And so let me kind of walk you guys through the parts that are needed for this retrofit. And then I'll kind of talk you guys through how I did some of the wiring, where the wires went, and kind of some things like that. So the parts that you need are obviously the headlights. So that's number one. You need the headlights, obviously. The headlights contain 3 different modules each. One module is the LED module. That one powers the DRL and things of that nature. The next module is the power module, which looks something very similar to this. And then the third module is the control module. The control module basically enables the headlight to turn and go up and down and do things like that. The power module obviously distributes power amongst the high beams and the turn signals and things like that. So you need those. What else do you need? You need a rear level height sensor that actually goes right on the lower control arm of that driver's side rear wheel. That basically tells the car, for example, if you're towing a trailer or something like that, if you got a lot of weight in the back, the headlights will automatically adjust so that you're not blinding people up ahead, and it also tells the car basically how high off the ground it is. The next module that you're going to need is the 4B module. The 4B module, otherwise known as the multifunction module, otherwise known as the headlamp cornering module. This is what controls the headlights. This is what controls essentially the turn signals, the left and right and up and down movements and things like that. You cannot run these headlights without this module. This module used to be known as the 55 module, but in newer cars it has been upgraded. Other features of this module that I've seen on VCDS is things like, I think, massaging seats and ventilated seats and things like that. I guess that this module powers that. And then the last module you need is the BCM. The body control module looks something similar to this. The BCM is responsible for things like your power windows, your mirrors, your wipers, your headlights, your turn signals, interior lights, and things of that nature, heated seats as well. Those are all of the parts that are needed, and you got them. Great, now you got to install them. So what do you do? But before I go there, I'm going to explain to you guys the one thing that really helps when I was ordering these modules. If you take a look, there's a connector right in there, or there should be a connector right in there. Because this module didn't come on the car, I did not have this connector anywhere. And so I was looking for these modules on eBay where the connector's plugged in and the wires are snipped off. So the reason for that is, in my experience, it's been very difficult to find connectors specific to modules. I guess you could go to the dealer, but it's not cheap, and it's just difficult because dealers don't usually deal with that kind of stuff. Been my experience. And the other reason is not only do you get the connector, but you also get the pins and the wires going into the connector. So essentially, if you have that pigtail kind of coming off of this module, all you got to do is you got to connect a wire up to that snipped wire and solder those wires together at that point, rather than having to source your own connector, rather than having to source your own pins and crimping them onto the wires and things like that. I just found it to be easier. So once you got all the parts, it's time to get to work. And what you'll find is the first thing is that the connectors to the headlights themselves are actually different between the Highline headlights and the halogen headlights. And the reason for that is the halogen headlight is a 10 pin, meaning there's 10 slots in this connector. You can actually see through it. And the SEL LED headlights, they have 14 pins. So right off the bat, you have to source a connector. I found the connector on Amazon, and actually on Amazon, they sell a 10 pin to a 14 pin adapter, basically. Just basically you plug in the 10 pin and then the other end of that adapter is the 14 pin. But that will not work for this car. You can't just plug that adapter in and expect anything to work, just because there's some wires that actually run, some new wires that actually run from the headlight into the car that did not exist before. So for that connector, I essentially just depinned it and just used the 14 pin side of it. I didn't even use the 10 pin side of it. And of course, in order to depin things, if you've ever retrofitted anything on these kinds of cars, you need a terminal tool set. This one is from Schwaben that I got years ago from ECS Tuning. I checked and they still sell them, but these things are invaluable. So let me show you what's inside. So this is the set. If you can see that, it's got a bunch of different size connectors and terminal plugs and things like that. The majority of the ones that I use is this relatively small one. If you can see that. That relatively small one, especially for interior things, and then occasionally I've used this single one, and occasionally I've used this one. I've never used the others. But anyway, this tool is imperative if you're going to do any kind of retrofitting and adding modules and running wires and things like that. Super, super helpful. Anyway, you got the modules. It's time to get to work. So first thing to do, of course, is to take off the bumper. I had the engine out anyway, so that wasn't a problem. But you take off the bumper, you take out the headlights, and you basically begin to run wires. I started with the headlight side, going into the interior. Yeah, some wires from the original 10-pin plug were able to be used. I believe 2 wires, actually 3 wires were able to be used from the original plug into the 14-pin plug, but you have a total of 8 wires in the 14 plug that are being used, and so you got to come up with 5 extra or 5 new wires that have to be ran. So I started there and basically rewired both headlight connectors, and let me kind of show you guys how this worked. So if you can see that down here is that 14-pin connector. The wire runs essentially along the frame rail there, then up through there, and then up through here, and then actually dips into the cowl. So you have to take this apart, and the wiring harness runs along here and then comes out right there. And then from this side, actually, if you can see that connector, similar story, the wiring runs down below this battery along the frame rail and into, you can't tell right now because the battery's in there, but there is a firewall port basically in that corner behind this strut tower. And that runs into, essentially next to the pedals, that runs next to the pedals down in there, and that's where the rest of the module work begins. And so from there, once you've run those wires into the interior, all of them except for 2 wires go to this headlight leveling cornering module, 4B module. The other 2, they actually go into the BCM, and then some wires also go from the 4B module into the CAN bus module. That's basically the diagnostic module. How did I do the wiring? You guys are going to be asking. I know the wiring, I got the wiring diagram directly from Volkswagen. I would love to show it to you guys, but unfortunately the wiring diagram itself has a stipulation that says I cannot share or reproduce any of those wiring diagrams. So I'm going to comply with Volkswagen. I don't want to get in trouble. But on my VW Vortex thread, I did paraphrase. I didn't show the wiring diagrams, but I basically pinpointed where the wires are supposed to go from each location to the next. So if you're really curious about that, do check it out. If you do want to create the wiring diagram, create an Irwin account, which is Irwin is Volkswagen and Audi's online portal, essentially. Once you do that, you can purchase a 1-day, 24-hour subscription for 35 bucks. Once you get approved, you have a 24-hour window to download anything and everything that you want. And that's actually how I rebuilt this car, is I went to Irwin, Elsa, and downloaded the engine diagram, the engine procedures, the body procedures, the wiring diagrams, the suspension procedures, the brake procedures, and things like that. So really a highly valuable tool. 35 bucks actually goes a long way. Within 24 hours, you can download everything for every car you have, cars you've had, or cars that you're gonna have. So highly, highly recommend you guys do that. But that is essentially how I knew where to run each wire. So once I ran each wire, at that point the headlights, only the low beams worked. The DRLs, the cool signature didn't work, the turn signals didn't work, the high beams didn't work. So essentially they were duds. No matter what light position the headlights were on, the headlights wouldn't work. That is to be expected because the body control module, this one, is component protected. Which means that the car is basically saying, hey, this is not my component, this is not my module, I'm gonna refuse because I think it might be stolen. As well as the 4B module, this one actually came from an Audi RS3. So basically the software and the settings have to be changed in this. And now we're getting into things that I don't really have a lot of experience with. You can find a lot of procedures on VCDS, VAGCOM, Rostec, things like that, but that only gets you to the diagnosis level. When you actually want to write software, when you actually want to communicate to the mothership, the Volkswagen mothership with online, you need something called Otis, which is a dealership level parameter writing, firmware downloading software. And that software costs thousands of dollars. I don't have access to it, but I did reach out and found a very nice person in Europe that actually had access to all of this stuff and was able to code and parameterize all of the headlights for me. And essentially what he did, or essentially how it worked, is you need a VAGCOM cable, a genuine one, which hopefully most of you guys already have, it's invaluable. You also need a VAS 5054 cable, that's VAS 5054. That is a dealership level cable that's available to be purchased. A buddy of mine actually had one and let me borrow it very generously for this kind of thing. And lastly, you need a Windows computer with internet access. And so essentially my counterpart in Europe helped me create a virtual machine, and through that virtual machine is how he was able to control the car and upload firmware as if he was here with me in the US, even though he was in Europe. And so essentially what he did is he not only removed component protection from the relevant components and things like that, but he also updated the software and firmware on both the headlights and the 4B module. And the last thing he did is match the adaptations of the body control module to match that of the Tiguan. And so once that was done, you clear the codes and all of a sudden the headlights come to life. And yeah, guys, it's awesome driving this thing at night. Much safer in my opinion. Well, not even in my opinion. It's much safer to drive with these really bright headlights. And not to mention, the headlights now turn with the steering wheel, they follow the road. When you turn the steering wheel, the side lights come on to kind of illuminate your way. So I'm very happy about them. I think they look fantastic. And that DRL signature, the way that they look, is just amazing. So yeah, guys, I hope this gave you a little bit of a perspective, of an idea on what it takes to retrofit something like this. I'll admit this is the most difficult retrofit I've ever done, not just from the wiring perspective and getting into tight spaces and things like that, but from the software standpoint. There's a lot of software and technology in these cars, and that's not changing anytime soon, but I've learned a whole bunch. And so once again, guys, feel free to head over to my VW Vortex page with much more detail, with part numbers, with pinouts and things like that if you're crazy enough to take on this project. But to me, it was absolutely worth it. I was able to find these parts for a very good deal, and I was able to integrate them almost like the factory would. So thanks so much, guys. I'm gonna put some more videos of me driving the car, showing you guys how the headlights work, but I'm super, super thrilled with the car. It not only does it look futuristic, it actually is futuristic. It has the cool headlights, and hopefully this motivated you to also do something like this, or do something along the lines of doing a retrofit and things like that. If you guys have any suggestions on the retrofits that I should do to this car, please don't hesitate and let me know. But as always, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys subscribing. Drop a like, ask me a question. If you're crazy enough to do something like this, I want to know. So hit me up, ask me any questions. I learned a whole bunch during this process. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Don't forget to check out my VW Vortex page. And I will link some links down below for you guys that want to dig into this further. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying it, and have a great week.